The status quo in Western Liberal Democracies is a world where religious minorities live in fear. They live in fear of discrimination. They live in fear of majorities encroaching on their very identities. Strict state secularism is the only way to solve this. We have two arguments for Team Japan. First, on why intertwinement of religion and politics is uniquely harmful. Second, on why minority religions are better off under strict state secularism. Before argumentation, three pieces on brand. Firstly, strict secularism looks like one where their state remains neutral and doesn't endorse or discriminate against any particular religion. This looks like three things. One, the state cannot take a stance on a particular religion. There will not be official state religion. The state will not provide funding to any religious schools or charities. Two, individuals are not allowed to do religious advocacy in public. You cannot hold posters of religious symbols. You cannot publicize your religious emblem. Three, individuals will be prohibited from bringing any religious symbols. For instance, schools cannot display a cross inside the classroom. Individuals that do not adhere to these will face criminal punishment. This can range from fines to incarceration depending on the severity of the violation of it. Secondly, people can still practice religion in their private spaces on our side. For instance, they can still pray at their homes. The churches and mosques that exist in the status quo will not be torn down as part of the motion for purification. The implication of this is that the benefits of religion in daily life still exist on our side. Thirdly, what is the burden on opposition? The world opposition needs to defend is the status quo. They cannot support for a hypothetical world. Moving on to the first argument as to why intertwinement of religion and politics is uniquely harmful. The thesis of this argument is that strict secularism is essential to ensure unbiased political discourse and equal access to public services. There are two layers in this argument. First layer, then, is why strict secularism is necessary to eliminate the intertwinement of religion and politics. No thank you. We think anything apart from it results in heavy intertwinement of religion and politics. This is due to three reasons. One, politicians have massive political incentive to capture religious votes. And note here that unlike other voters, religious supporters solidify the politician support because they are the most loyal voters. For instance, today, about 25% of the US do identify themselves as evangelicals, and most of them backed Donald Trump in the 2016 elections and tipped the scales in his favor. Two, religious organizations have both the incentive and the capacity to lobby the government. They want to push their policies, but they also have lots of capital to do lobbying. They acquire funding through donations from their followers and use it to hire lobbyists to promote campaigns. This looks like the NAE, National Association of Evangelicals Lobbying and Abortion, or the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops Lobbying Euthanasia. Three, the line as to what violates the separation of church and state is inherently unclear. Just consider the US president placing their hand on a Bible during inauguration. Does this endorse Christianity, or is it merely ceremonial? Or when the schools teach moral living of thy neighbor, is it promoting Christianity? The implication of this is that the blurred boundary between politics and religion makes it extremely difficult for justice systems to step in. For example, Japanese ministers were accused of holding ceremonies at religious temples, but courts have not ruled against them. Thus, once something ambiguous is deemed acceptable, it sets a precedent, and over time slowly normalizes more and more extreme forms of non-secularized political involvement. Thus, strict secularism is necessary because it is only when you ban all forms of religious public expression that parents lose the power to demand for Bible studies in schools, that religious groups are barred from lobbying, and that religious protests are banned. Over time, discourse surrounding secularism will fade away on our side. It will be normalized to not talk about religion and not bring up religion into public, which further decreases the incentive of politicians to pass discriminatory religious policies. On to the second thing. What are the impacts of this dysfunctional secularism? The impact of this is twofold. First, it restricts people's capacity to go to public space. When religion and other things such as politics or education get tangled up, it creates enormous harm. This is because the state gives more political and financial support to these religions. This looks like Christians lobbying for LGBTQ+ books to be banned from schools. This looks like gay people being barred from accessing public services and LGBTQ+ free zones in Poland. And this is harmful on two levels. A, on a practical level, certain people are barred from vital public services such as schools and hospitals. Obviously, these are incredibly important for people, and you cannot live without them. When they are not welcome in these places, they feel like their identity is not valued by the state on a daily basis. And B, on the principle, public spaces are funded by tax money, which is contributed by all citizens. Therefore, principally, everyone ought to have an equal right to use the benefit from these spaces. Our second impact is on politics. This comes in twofold. A, entanglement between politics and religion erodes political discourse and compromise. This is because when political parties are tied to religious groups, it significantly has capacity to compromise religious issues. This looks like Christians lobbying for no sex education at all and being unwilling to accept atheist These policies could pass the government, as these followers of radical beliefs such as evangelicals form significant political power. Strict secularism prevents more of these harms from occurring. And before I move on for a second argument, I'll do
from expressing the pride flag in public spaces.
what you say.
Would you also ban LGBTQ individuals from expressing the pride flag in public spaces?
No. We're talking about the religious practices, and that's not analysis today. Okay, moving on to the second argument as to why the minority religions are better off on our side. The thesis of this argument is that we reduce tensions which harm minority religions by reducing public religious discourse. On to the first argument as to why unfettered access to public space necessarily creates a place of high competition between religions. First of all, it's important to note the context of this debate. As I pointed out from my intro, the status quo of the world by religious minorities live in fear. This shows that religions have a hard time coexisting, and oftentimes minority religions feel pushed aside by a majoritarian society. In this debate, opposition will lie to you that religion in the current world can coexist harmoniously. We tell you that as and always will not work, for structural reasons. 1. Exposure to different religions in the public fuels people's antagonism against minority religions. Religions often have contradictory ideas, and for those of the Christian faith, seeing public Muslims festivals celebrated in public is a constant reminder of how much they fundamentally disagree with their religion. Every time you see them, you feel like you're being invaded by these foreign religions. Often, state secularism is what happened because you don't see religions in public anymore. 2. The concept of religious freedom in the public allows people to attack other religions. The line between hate speech and right to religious expression is inherently blurry, and individuals can split it against other religions. This looks like Christians going around to the top sign saying that our country is a Christian country. Implicitly excluding Muslim minorities. Comparatively, people cannot weaponize religion in public. 3. Politicians have a massive incentive to weaponize negative sentiment against minority religion for their own favor, as that oftentimes gives them votes. This looks like politicians calling all Muslims quote-unquote Islamic radicalists to instigate fear, or in the worst case, Switzerland adding construction of minarets, the symbol of Islam on mosques. Comparatively, politicians cannot talk about or weaponize religion. 4th and lastly, minorities feel neglected as society disproportionately favors majority religion. This is because everywhere you go, you see Christian symbols. From the lens of the Muslim, you feel your belief is not represented enough. Comparatively, minorities are not shown in the face with majoritarian religious symbols. Our impact of this is very simple. Minorities live in peace. They're able to walk down the street every day like any normal person. For all these reasons, I'm very proud of this.
A world where your faith is reduced to a dirty secret, allowed only within the confines of four walls, where you're villainized, persecuted, and deemed unfit because of your faith, is a morally repugnant world. Side opposition will never support such a world panel. We're so proud to oppose. Before I move on to constructive, a few responses to their case, and then I'll move on to a few points of setup, and lastly, our constructive argument. With that being said, what do we get from here? There's two main points. First, we understand how they don't want politics and religion to be intertwined, and how that leads to pushing for more extremist ideas, because these people want to rally these extremist policies and how they're bad. Okay, why is this untrue? Firstly, we think just because you ban public religious expression does not mean that these incentives these people have, that the fact that these people want these policies to be pushed from the first place will just disappear. Which means that this significant group of people who want to have such extremist policies in place will still want that, but now they're not able to publicly express this. What does that mean? Now they feel actively threatened. They feel like, and they also tell us that they're going to be the most radical group of people. But the thing is, now they feel they're being suppressed by the majority, they're being suppressed by the state, which means they're likely to be even more antagonistic. extreme forms of practices that some European countries like France are already doing. But that means not our second part of setup. How is this imposition of strict state secularism going to be done in the first place? A. In a biased manner, the majority of these Western liberal democracies have a long-standing Christian heritage, which is largely seeped into their culture now. These countries will continue to cherish this heritage and its symbols. They're so integrated into the daily lives of these people that these countries won't recognize them as merely religious symbols, but also as a cultural symbol, as Italy did with the crucifix. So what will happen is an imbalance of imposition because Christianity will be expressed publicly under the veil of culture, while other religious expressions will fall under the guillotine and be smashed. For example, Christmas is a large part of the cultures of these nations and will most likely continue to be celebrated grandly in public spheres. Hence, these symbols will most likely still be displayed in public. It is only religious minorities whose ability to express their religion will need to be sacrificed. But secondarily, public servants like teachers, government officials, etc. will enforce these policies at their subjective discretion in public spaces. This is like a French teacher chastising a girl because her skirt was too long and similar to a burqa. This means there is no uniform application of this policy due to the varying interpretation of these policies these people have because they're so unfamiliar and the lack of exposure to these practices in the first place. So even normal things often appear as unlawful because they just don't know enough about it. Let's see, the punishment of violation for this policy can exist on a wide spectrum, including imposition of hefty fines, imprisonment, and at times maybe even beating up innocent individuals. Proposition has to prove by even risking confrontation and injuring people to defend this policy of theirs is morally legitimate on their side. I'll take that later. But what is our stance panel? A. Broadly, we support minimal intervention in religions. People can choose what religious parties to wear, their own religious affiliation, and can feel comfortable practicing religion not only in close confinement but also in public spaces. B. We support offering subsidies to religions as a way of moderating them and controlling them via funding. C. We will still have hate speech laws in place, so religious messaging that actively demeans other religions or have third-party harms will still be restricted regardless. With that being said, on to our first contract argument on why Islamic leaders, strict state and some strips away the freedom of religious expression. This argument does use the best case of proposition because even if we think they can actually enforce the policy uniformly for all religions, it ought not to be done if we can prove it as a direct violation of people's freedom of expression. If religion, which is crucially tied to their identity, is being attacked. The premise here is religion is a fundamental part of someone's identity now. It can't be temporarily given up because the same way you cannot fundamentally ask a trans person to have to temporarily identify with their birth gender merely because others are offended by it or disagree with their identity, right? Why is the expression of religion in the public sphere a critical part of one's identity? It indicates your moral beliefs. It influences your actions in both public and private spheres. Religion is a crucial way to access peace and solace for these people. People see religion as an act of self-defense and the active threat of going to hell for those who really believe in it. People fulfill their religious duty by being able to express it in the public in the first place. How does strict state secularism then violate religious identity? Because firstly, mainly it restricts the ability to express religious belief that a way is meaningful to you. If a Muslim woman thinks it's imperative for her to be able to wear the burqa, any type of rejection of that freedom would be a denial of her ability to practice her religion. But B, when you can't practice your faith in a way that is deemed right by you feel like a sinner. These practices are key mandates provided by your religion, and they think it's essential to follow this. But additionally, it also exposes the hypocrisy of Western Liberal Democracies panel, which pride themselves as the so-called bastions of freedom and choice. The conclusion of this argument then is one's religious identity cannot just be separated into a private and public life. Proposition is committing an egregious moral violation. You cannot be a bystander to this principle assault. But before I go on to my second argument,
even if incentive to which religion and liars have been symmetric, government funding public schools or religious schools or using religious freedom or proselytization as an excuse to bash other religions and the explicit forms of discrimination on religion will become the use of our sentiments.
So we feel like we're not able to guarantee that this is not going to happen. So in states, so if you can have France just ban the hijab for Muslims under the name of secularism while not doing so for other religions, we're not sure how they're able to ensure these majority biases will not seep into because they don't have other forms of holding these governments accountable. I think that answers it. On to the second argument of strict state secularism and how that leads to more polarization and radicalization beyond repair in these countries. How does proposition create alienation of religion from the state panel? This encourages seclusion between different religious communities, and why is that so? It reduces the willingness of religious
to oppose. In the status quo, Western Liberal Democracies is one or are places where Christian majoritarianism hide under the veil of moderate secularism. One where education that is supposed to be for everyone is stained by biblical rhetoric, where minorities fear crossing the street because they will be called a terrorist. We are not saying that religion in and of itself is bad, but we think that the restriction of public faith is necessary to negate the very negative impacts of religion. So proud to propose. I would like to be doing a couple of things in my speech today. Firstly, talking about what our world looks like and the implementation of strict state secularism. Secondly, on religious freedom. Thirdly, on the intertwinement of religion and politics, and lastly, on minority. Firstly, what does the implementation of strict state secularism look like? Opposition tries to come up here and say that strict state secularism will only be applied to minorities. Well, we say that this is simply not true for a couple of reasons. Firstly, please read the motion and the motion clarification. We are basically supporting very strict state secularism, something that applies to all people living in the state, which includes bans on all religious symbols, including both Christian crosses and Muslim headscarves. So the opposition cannot just come up here and say that this will only be applied to burqas and hijabs. If a Christian cross is used as religious advocacy, we will obviously still ban it. If parents come to the school board trying to get Christian beliefs into the public curriculum, we will still ban it. And most importantly, if there is lobbying, obviously we will ban it. But secondly, we think that the premise of that entire argument is wrong. They try to say that people just don't have enough knowledge about religions and religious faith and religious public displays in order to be able to restrict these Muslims or these Christians equally in the first place. But I think that is simply not true. The fundamental tenets of religion, the clothing, the accessories, the practices are largely known by everyone. Everyone knows that a Christian cross is a symbol of Christianity in the same way that everyone knows that hijabs are part of Muslim faith. We don't think that anything stupid like banning Muslim girls long dresses will happen. But if that is an expression of religion, we think that yes, we do have a justification to ban it. But lastly, we say, so what? Even if the lines are blurry, we think that we are at least able to apply this policy to the vast majority of things that are generally agreed upon as religious. We are still able to ban the most obvious forms of religious displays. Sure, Christmas might not be banned, but at least on our side, we can prevent people from using religious crosses to get across very, very anti-Muslim rhetoric, right? We think that the most extreme forms and the most extreme harms will still be prohibited on our side because those harms are clear. No, thank you. So they can't just they can just point at Halloween and cross necklaces all they want, but that doesn't engage with the crux of our argument. With that, the implication of all of this is that strict secularism will be applied to an equal extent. But secondly, on religious freedom, nothing guilty like that. The opposition tries to come up here and say that public faith and public displays of faith are very important to your expression of religion. We think that this is untrue for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we think that the people's conception, or religious people's conception of normalcy can change over time. Because once this policy is enacted, once strict state secularism is enacted, every single micro aspect of your life changes. There are no more theology courses in college, no more religious protests, and the people around you cannot say your faith openly. So once you continue this for a couple of years, you get used to this life simply because society as a whole does not assign religion in public any collective significance. We think that this looks like, for example, after the genocide that happened in Rwanda, the president banned citizens from expressing their ethnicity publicly, and now people are just fine with that. They're willingly expressing their religious freedom under the veil of their private faith. So the implication of this is that when states implement strict state secularism, this is not oppression, because people will adapt willingly to this religion. So it is not an oppression of religious freedom if people are going to adapt and express their religious freedom willingly. But secondly, we say that the degree to which public display of faith matters is incredibly limited. For most people who practice religion, the ultimate goal of practicing faith is forming a personal connection with God. The biggest moments of elevation and emotional salvation for religious people come from praying to God and getting salvation from God, which happens through prayer, right? So although we do electricity, and enjoy your communication with God. The implication of this is that you do not feel like you're being betrayed by the state because you will adapt to it, and it's not an important freedom that you're giving up. But lastly, we think that the choice to exercise religion in the public is less important when compared to the choice to exercise other things. So this choice of freedom and religious freedom is not absolute. Because religions are contradictory in nature, your right to perform religion in public greatly offends and harms the of other religions. We think that the state is justified to limit certain rights of expression when there is a third party harm. We see this in bans of hate speech. We see this in bans of graffiti. Because although you are self-expressing yourself, you are harming others. We think that is not just at the point at which we proved to you from our first speaker why there are explicit third party harms. Thirdly, on the intertwinement of religion and politics, we think they told us, the opposition tried to come up here and say a couple of things. Firstly, they said that even if there is separation, people still practice that faith in hidden places. But we think that that's exactly why we want to take this motion, right? We don't want Christians to come out of their community and impose their religious bans on LGBTQ plus people. We think that that is good. But secondly, they tried to tell us that Christian people can still vote through other means and through passing off abortion as pro-life. But we think that even if we can't concede that we cannot change abortion, we can still change a multitude of things on our side. We told you from our first speaker that these policies become less absolutist because at the point at which you're not assigning your political views with your religion, there's more space for compromise because it's not a clash of identity. Secondly, even if you can still vote for abortion policies through other means, we think that there's still many other huge benefits, such as being able to ban lobbying, such as being able to ban people from getting out that cross and protesting outside Muslim mosques and making people feel very uncomfortable. We think that this is a benefit that does not exist on their side. Finally, on minorities, they told us that the discrimination towards minorities will get worse on our side because there will be seclusion. But we think that we can flip this argument and say seclusion happens more on that side. At the point in which, we told you from our first speaker, that the reason why Christian people do not want to interact with Muslim people is because they look at Muslim people to see their workers and feel very threatened that their country is being indoctrinated by Muslim beliefs. We think that less people on that side will want to even interact with Muslim people in the first place. We think we can get rid of these public displays of expression. We think that people can get together at schools and get together as human beings, not judge each other by their religious faith. For all these reasons, we think that we are good for the majority and minority religions, so proud to propose.
3 pieces of clarification at the very top of my speech. 1. No, most religions within communities have existed for centuries and centuries, decades and decades, which means majority religions within these countries are likely to continue to have significant levels of influence within it. Churches don't just magically disappear. Your religious symbols continue to exist within people. Within Italy, the church's symbol of the cross is seen as a cultural icon instead of religion in and of itself. These are things which continue to exist on the other side of the world because governments have every incentive to keep them there. Because according to their own narratives, people care about religion, which means governments will want to keep this. They do not have the fear to somehow presume that every single thing that is culture automatically disappears, which means majorities continue to perpetuate their cycles. And this is the most important nuance and clarification. We're telling you that minorities are the ones that are oppressed because now these are the individuals who automatically cannot express themselves because they were never a part of culture to begin with. Second, for most Muslims, the only way you can express yourself is often through public places. If I, as a woman within Islam, do not wear a burqa, I'll always feel like I'm sinning every time I decide to go out within society. They can't simply tell me that, and this was a genuine suggestion. If you're a religious minority, just move on. Accept the fact that your faith can't be practiced because this weird government wants to make sure you can't practice your faith. If that is the reality they're trying to defend, we tell you that is morally illegitimate for them to do so. Individuals and governments have no right to express what form of religions should ever take part in. We believe the only time when you oppress these individuals, you automatically dehumanize them and reduce their ability to practice who they really are. Finally, this is a Western Liberal Democracy channel. Do not let them pull you into ideas of populist politics because every single thing they've talked about is about populism. It exists on every single layer and not just religion. Conservatism continues to be extremely populist even if it isn't directly tied to religion. Politicians are unlikely to change on both sides of the war. At the end of the day, religion isn't the reason for for why these are happening. Therefore, there's no reason to ban it. It's because of populist politics. Unless they can somehow prove that populist politics disappears, we believe none of their claims about religious lobbying exist in any status quo whatsoever. What will I be doing at the end? First, a few layers of important responses, then two things. One, on the principle, which severely has yet to be responded to, and second, on how secularism increases seclusion between different religious groups and makes it exceptionally hard for them to get along. First then, on a few years of responses. The first thing that it does is that it normalizes religion because it becomes extremist in nature. We tell you that there are extreme existing checks and balances within systems. When you go out and explicitly talk about hate speech, you'll always have opposition parties and opposition individuals likely calling you out and targeting you from doing so. We believe this exists because of how Western Liberal Democracies function, where freedom of speech allows different forms of groups to come up and hold politicians into direct forms of account. But even if you don't believe that, we tell you that religion in and of itself deserves to have a view regardless. We are unlikely to believe why it is unfair for you as a religious person to hope that your mosques and your churches can be prettier and better, to hope that your fundings can automatically be accreted. And then finally, the third layer, about hate speech. There are existing laws that are already in place within Western Liberal Democracies which reduce your ability to commit hate crimes or go for hate speech, which means that automatic argument already splashed out in the entirety of this debate. Unless they can prove that for some reason it is exclusive for religions to be banned, it still continues to be morally illegitimate. The next thing that I would tell us is that for some reason religions have contradicting ideas and this will create contradicting beliefs. We get to understand what the deeper layers of analysis under this is. When I choose to go and wear a burqa in public, there's no reason for me to be shunned and directly called out in any state of the scenario. Most people move on with their lives. We believe it is unlikely to be as extreme as they tell you to be. But even if we tell you that we'll flip it, when you don't have levels of expression, that is the moment in time you don't understand these people anymore. That is when the very populist politicians they talk about can dehumanize you because you automatically do not know what Muslims look like and they can feed you narratives of extremism. When you allow different forms of voices to come in, you allow checks and balance mechanisms to make sure religious individuals aren't dehumanized and demonized by politicians who have every incentive to do so. This form of check and balance makes sure these individuals can continue to have a valued life. First then, on the principle, we've given you every single layer of analysis for why it is morally legitimate. We've given you layers of POIs and why, and we asked them this, would you allow a gay individual to not express their pride flag in public and to yet get a response? Note panel, this is extremely symmetrical. The way through which religious individuals express and empower themselves is through being a part of religion, is through expressing themselves in public and is through feeling like the God is with them no matter where they go. The moment in time these individuals are barred from doing so, they feel dehumanized and there's a level of innate human belief where you feel like you're less than everyone else around you, where you feel like your ability to express yourself is for some reason barred by a state even though you did nothing wrong. We've yet to hear any responses for why this is problematic. The reason why all of this is important and it matters within the debate is because the ability to express yourself is the way through which you can form your identity. We believe this debate exists for every single person who's religious, but also for religious minorities as well. No panel. These are individuals who have left everything in their countries behind. These are people who've come to these countries for the sake of immigration because they've had no other choice. The only identity that they're often able to bring with them is their own religion. Yet they're stripped away from this on their side of the world. We are made to feel that you can't express yourself because the state tells you that you're somehow harmful. We believe this is further perpetuated by individuals. When individuals are able to frame you under claims of how you're evil and that's why the government directly banned you, this further perpetuates hate speech. And this is important. Even if in public spaces it doesn't happen, minor forms of don't disappear. If you're Muhammad at the end of your name, everyone knows you're a Muslim. Within these communities, it's not that you automatically don't face harms anymore. You will continue to do so. The only thing that then changes is your ability to express yourself in public. Unless they're able to show to you why in private spaces you won't be dehumanized, you're unlikely to understand the entirety of their case. What the end of this is, the principle continues to stand. Unless they're able to prove why this egregious forms of harm are somehow justified, we believe they automatically cannot win the debate. Second, on secularism increases seclusion. No matter. Under the current status quo, governments can continue to fund these forms of religious groups. They can fund churches and they can fund Muslims. Which is why we have popes who directly go up and tell you that it is fine to be homosexual because you can still end up going to heaven. The reason for why this exists is where religions have an innate incentive to become more palatable over time. However, when you directly bar them from being able to access on their side, these individuals are left to only cater to the most extremist forms of groups because they want to hold on to them and make sure these people never leave these groups to begin with. What does this look like? It means you going up to your other church individuals and telling you that look, if you leave these communities, you're not fulfilling your holy duties. these forms of extremist narratives would often turn other people off and they do not have an incentive to do so. But here, this is the only way through which they can hold on to the small amounts of groups which can continue to support them. The problem with this, then, is how it increases the very level of extremism that they talk about. The next thing about this is, and this is the second layer, religious ideologies and political ideologies fall under very small grounds. What this means is you can frame a lot of religious things under claims of political ideologies as well. Abortion may be innately religious in nature, but at the end of the day, it can still be framed under claims of pro-life. At the end of it all, what this means is politicians, due to having aggregated levels of religious individuals who want and feel more things because of feeling like they've been marginalized by the state, now vote for these groups that they themselves want to harm against. This means the very perpetual forms of harms, of aggression, of minority repercussions, of making sure your religion doesn't become unsafe for others, are the very burdens they themselves fail at the very beginning of their speech. The reason why then all of this matters is because when seclusion increases, the ability for minorities to come into power automatically falls as well. People have in-groups that are built into them. People feel like different religions are different and should remain within their own dedicated communities. Muslims fear going out in public because they feel like the state does not recognize them, which creates more internal groups, reduces the ability for groups to simply interact and go together with each other, and it reduces the ability for them to then come into positions of power within the states as well. Now, it is illegitimate to say that religion is harmful. It brings you peace, it brings you solace, and therefore, to say that religious individuals do not deserve to express themselves is a morally vicious.
I want to travel three themes in this speech. Firstly, let's talk about religious freedom. Secondly, on religious entanglement with politics. Lastly, on minorities. Before that though, I want to make two clarifications to support this debate. Firstly, let's talk about the likely implementation of this strict state secularism. And I want to note that they say, oh, majorities will define religion and selectively apply civility under the veil of culture. And I'm in this awkward position right now because if you look at this motion clarification, the motion clarification does indeed tell you that you are going to ban a lot of the obvious forms of things, regardless of what culture or religion it is. Look at it, I will quote, a person wearing a cross necklace or a thick turban or hijab in the public, all of these are going to be simply banned from our side of the house in the public, which has meant that it's unclear to me what they are pushing for in this debate. And I do agree that as a court motion, you have to simply defend your life implementation, right? But the motion clarification does tell us that we have to defend the world, and I think the role that they accuse us of defending is not a role of strict state secularism, which is why we simply cannot get swayed by the rhetoric. Which is why our impact, when we tell you from first, stand already. We tell you that if a Christian cross is used for religious activity in the public, we will ban it. If parents approach schoolwork in corporate religion and education, we will ban it. And quite obviously, if politicians fund religious organizations or religious schools, we will also punish them. And if you cannot punish these people, this is not strict secularism, which is why I think our case stands at this point already. Secondly, let's talk about your claim on if the youth exploiting people internally in the private. This immediately falls under the two key grounds. First, exploitation lessons on our side of the house. Because if it is true that religions want money, we think that they would not be as exploited because they would no longer be able to cross the path in the public in our side of the house. And notice here, remember, panel, that the religions cannot depend on the current followers all the time, which means that they have to gain new followers, which means that they cannot become exploited in our side of the house. But secondly, it is actually only on our side of the house that can effectively crack down on them. Because when we have strict state secularism, we have the capacity to police religion, because we are the only side that can punish these kind of religion displays, whether that be misleading posters, for instance. Opposition's rule is a nowhere. The governments are so pro-religious freedom, and a lot of the religious organizations are actually able to lobby the government all in the name of religious freedom. And therefore, at the point in which they concede that religion has some sort of coercion and exploitation, that at the point in which it simply worsens on their side of the house. Here's the way, though. Two pieces of way. One, even if it gets more exploitative, there's limitations on how exploitative it can be. It's unclear how much exploitation they're talking about. But second of all, I think that if it gets exploited, even if that's the case, at least it's more difficult to join religion on our side of the house as well, which means that in the long run, there's less people exploited in religion in the first place, which is why your path between on-full religion exploitation is gone. First class, but before that,
If it does get more exploitative, and sure, more new people find harder to join, the most vulnerable people who are born into this religion are not forced to permanently serve because the religion has no incentive to be palatable because it's no longer publicly exposed and cannot gather followers in that way. How do you do it?
Sure, but I just said that if not being exploited, it gets worse than other kind of house, so their weighing is against this kind of house. Firstly, let's talk about Firstly, you not being able to wear hijab is not analogous to you not being able to be a Muslim woman, right? It is simply demeaning for opposition to say that if they cannot wear it, they don't feel empowered. Especially when we told you from the heroic speech as to what the inherent purpose of God is not to simply actually give posters to people in the public, rather it is to individually connect with God, to talk to pastors, which is why in Buddhism in Japan, a lot of the people are actually going to mountains to individually collect with God. I think that religious conception can in fact change. But second of all, I think that the long-term trend has meant the normalization of new conceptions of religion are in fact going to be adopted on our side of the house. Because imagine guys, this motion gives us this magical idea that in Western Liberal Democracies, strict state secularism is going to be adopted. What does this mean? UK, US, France, a lot of old kind of countries, big countries are going to adopt this policy. Given that religious pastors, for instance, and priests have an incentive to gain new followers, they have an incentive to actually interpret this religion in a new subjective way, which is why Hiroko's analysis and how religious interpretations can change stand at this point already. The implication here is simple. The reason why it responds to your claim is freedom to call religion is that it's not the state oppressing you. When the state actually adopts this policy, people willingly make a choice not to wear hijab insofar as that is their own choice, which is why I think it really alter things. But even if that's not true, the unfortunately reality of the world that we live in is that there are some coercion in religion that exists in the status quo. So it's true that many people want hijab on their own, right? But it is also true that most people don't meaningfully opt into religion because they're born into it. And two, the choice to opt out of religion is not a realistic choice. When God tells you that your religion is the eternal way of salvation, and when your parents and your families actually adopt your religion, which has meant that there are also some people that are coerced into actually wearing hijab or actually wearing those symbols in the public, which has meant that all way those new people or choice can adopt, but on their side of the house, those people who are coerced into wearing it is going to be eternal, which is why the harms are asymmetric, but those vulnerable people are going to be uniquely harmed on their side of the house. But even if we lose on the right, there's two ways about it. One, on the practical part, to be frank, I know this is kind of counterintuitive, but we did prove to you why wearing those hijab, for instance, are going to actually give you some sort of practical harm when we talk about the second argument of minorities. And in the same way, we don't allow people to just go into dangerous locations, or we actually mandate things like seatbelt laws, we think that practical harms can outweigh these kind of fluffy impacts. But secondly, on Mill's harm principle, we tell you from Hiroko's speech as to why it's significantly harms other people, which is why religious right is not standing in this debate already. Let's talk about religious entanglement. There are cases that abortion is metric, but I think there's a lot of illustrations which in the right point of view. This is in Poland, 100 cities and villages in Poland have adopted resolution to free LGBTQ free zones in the public. They simply bar them away from those public spaces. These are the harms that will not exist on our side of the world. Then they think, oh, but other lobbying exists. Sure, but that doesn't respond to their impact, right? All of our impacts that we outlined here from first about how individuals cannot simply go to public, or how things like education are the worst on their side of the house is still our responded to. On practical way, one, this impacts everyone who is in a public space. Think about how Darwinism rejects science, and that in US Oklahoma, literally 10 commandments were actually mandated, which harms everyone. But secondly, public spaces is something that affects you in daily life. But another principle, public space is actually created on tax money, which is why I think this has to be accessible to minorities in every single person. Again, finally, let's talk about minorities. There are cases that minorities will be furthered, harmed, if you don't contact with them. The problem is that they assume that when you contact with them, you will get along. They miss a nuance. Two things. One, you can also contact with them on our side of the house as well. It's just that they're not wearing hijab, right? But secondly, note that religion is contradictory. Who is God? What is a good believer? Those things are contradictory, which means that when you contact with them, you are more likely to identify them as a threat to your religion, which is why conflict versus on their side of the house. So on our side of the house, Muslims and Christians are going to sit in the same classroom and talk together harmoniously. But on their side of the house, when they simply talk about religion, when they simply put their religious symbols, that is the point in which you are going to disproportionately harm minorities on their side of the house. This is why I think we are winning on minorities as well. Finally, on hate speech laws, it has and always will not work because of blurriness. Just note how unintuitive and morally bankrupt this analogy is. This is not working in the status quo, which is why we have to take this policy.
Now, imagine being denied your autonomy, being robbed of your only source of solace, just because the
prayer beads in your hands make someone else feel uncomfortable. We refuse to stand for such a world. I have three questions in this debate. Firstly, which one better protects the fundamental rights of individuals? Secondly, which one better controls radicalization? Thirdly, which one protects the most vulnerable? But before that, I have two clarifications. Firstly, we make this debate about how we vowed to only go against minorities. That's literally not what we tell you. We tell you that that this is likely to happen against all of these religions. But the moment in time it happens in Western liberal democracies, because Christianity is so integrated into the culture, which looks like Christmas being celebrated everywhere because it's their import culture, because it's their discarded. Because of all of these reasons, it's likely that even if you do ban them, it will stay in regard to culture, which is exactly why it's unlikely to work on their side of the world. Secondly, we tell you that on their side of the world, all their claims look like religion is bad. In just that case, fine. If religion is so bad, why don't we ban it in public spaces? Why not everywhere? Moving on to my first question, which world better protect the fundamental rights of individuals? They come here and tell you that people's principal right to go outside is barred because now religious people lobby politicians. I have three responses to this. Firstly, understand that this literally cannot be taken away in the first place. Why? Because these governments need these individuals to give them votes, which is why they will literally not bar them from going to public spaces. On a secondary level, these are Western Liberal Democracies which care about the international reputation which comes from media houses, right? The moment in time you're likely to sign with these religious organizations on such a large scale, you will have backlash no matter what. Secondly, they claim that we do not read the motion, but I wish they did that, because their claim of WLBs having this is literally flawed. WLBs, by constitution, literally cannot side with religious organizations to such an extent that they lobbied to the great extent that Japan claims. Thirdly, even if we take them as the best case scenario, even if this principle stands, it still takes away individuals' autonomy. The one thing that matters the most to individuals is human dignity. What do we tell you then? Firstly, we tell you that proposition's world snatches away your most fundamental right of religious expression. They attempt to do some feeble rebuttals to it. But why does it fail? Because firstly, their only rebuttal that comes here is that with time you come to normalcy. Firstly, you never come to normalcy. Religion has been integrated into your identity and into who you are from the very beginning. It's literally from your birth. All you have known about yourself, all of it is a part of that religion. No matter how much time passes by, even if you're on your deathbed, you will never come to normalcy. But secondly, even if you take them at the best case scenario, even if that happens, you still lose your autonomy, which is the most important thing in this debate. Because understand that this principle stands no matter what utility they can show you. Because I, as a human being, my dignity matters the most. My autonomy matters the most. Whether or not I can stay within my religion, I can show my religion to the world, whether I can fulfill my religion is something that I care about the most. But why is this extremely important in panel? Understand that religion caters to these people on an individual level, right? It gives them the solace and hope that they need on their darkest of nights. It ensures that it acts as a self-defense mechanism against the afterlife and against hell. But most importantly, it protects you from individuals because your identity is not for anyone. Come to my second question. In regards to radicalization, we already combat this. The moment in time we bring their case down, which literally revolves around the idea that now these politicians are going to be lobbied by these politicians are likely to be lobbied for religious organizations. But even if their claim of how, they're going to have policing in their side of the world. But why does this not stand? Because now religion is likely to double down on their side of the world. Why is so? Because of two reasons. Firstly, because on their side of the world, you literally don't know what's going on in regards to these religions. Because all of these happen within closed doors. You don't know which extreme group has come up. You don't know what these politicians are doing because you literally do not let them talk out in public. There's no check and balance mechanism to ensure that they cater to. But on a secondary scale, understand that now on their side of the world, preachers, do not get to bring people back to religion. What is it that they do then? They ensure that the limited amount of people that they have, they double down on these people. How do they do so? They tell them that you are in danger, that you need to protect your identity, which is why they're likely to become even more radical. Why is that? Because it leads to even more political tensions within these WLBs, which ensures that these people are an active harm on their side of the world. Before moving on, I'll be taking that to your
Christians used to use the Bible to justify slavery, not now. The Pope welcomes gay people in church. And the Saudi grace now allows them to thrive. Why can't people's conception of religion change?
Sure, their conception of religion can change, but that shouldn't be at the cost of their identity. You don't change their conception, you change their identity. Even on the best case scenario, right? Even if they have some form of backlash for radicalization, it comes at the legitimacy of people. Because on their side of the world, because strict secularism exists, you literally bash up these people the moment in time they talk about religion. Moving on to my third question, why do we protect the most vulnerable of individuals? Here, they come to you and tell you that minorities on their side of the world are saved. I have 5 responses to this. Firstly, understand that no, minorities are not saved. They're oppressed even further. Why is this so? Because the only form of identity, solace for these minorities is their religion. Understand this, panel. Because no matter how much discrimination you face as a minority within these WLBs, you still choose to stay within this religion because you actively care about this religion. The moment in time they bar these individuals from literally expressing their faith, that's exactly when they feel even more oppressed. On a secondary level, even if, in their best case scenario, they do save these minorities to a certain extent that comes at the cost of the autonomy of these minorities. Given that these minorities, even according to them, are the most vulnerable individuals, understand the moment in time you take away another layer of vulnerability from them, which is their autonomy, you make them even worse. The moment in time they talk about polarity that exists, understand that polarity is even further on their side of the world. This is because majority now have communal sentiment to only cater to themselves. We're talking about the us versus them mentality, which is why they double down on minorities. What do we tell you then? We tell you that on their side of the world, these religious organizations, which cater to the most vulnerable individuals, are likely to downsize. Why is this bad? Because these are the religious institutions which cater to people within rural areas who will never be catered to by governments. We tell you that these individuals are the most vulnerable. These individuals are the ones who are likely to be orphans, who are likely to have free education or free food. These religious institutions are the ones who literally build infrastructure in rural areas from the funding that they give. Because we tell you why we protect the most vulnerable individuals, why we protect their rights, why we protect them from radicalization, to win this debate. Panel, before I get into the major part of this reply speech, I just want to note, they start this debate off by saying they want to protect minorities because they don't want the majority shoving up their own religious symbols on their face. But then their second speech concedes, okay, but we might have Christmas in our side, but we still have some benefits. So they're okay with having majority celebrating Christmas in the brightest of ways when Muslims and other people don't get to celebrate festivities like Eid on their side of the world. That is inherently problematic. We don't think any other thing stands. There's a contradiction in itself. But then they talk about how not wearing a burqa does not make a Muslim woman somehow not Muslim. The problem here is they for all of the females who are so proud to join us.
The world that the opposition side had to defend in this debate was a world where discrimination happens on a daily basis to Muslim people walking down the street because they're wearing a burqa, because they're thought of as terrorists. They have to defend a world in which lobbyists lobby the government all the time and make these religious and indoctrinated curriculums with religious rhetoric. We think that discriminatory laws was not enough for them to reduce the harms on everyone and on minorities on their side, which is why we're so proud to propose in today's debate. I'd like to do go through three questions in today's debate. Firstly, on religious freedom, secondly, on religious entanglement in politics, and finally, on minorities. But firstly, on religious freedom. Note that we've already told you down our bench that religion is very adaptable. In Indonesia, it's now optional to wear a burqa now. In Iran, people actually, Muslim women actively voted for a president that would make a hijab optional. So from this you can see that identity or religious identity is inherently subjective, and that the changing of this of these identities is not forced in any way whatsoever. And at best it only causes very short-term harms on their side, which we are willing to concede. Because they still have the option of praying 5 times a day at home, they can still talk to pastors, they can still get the emotional salvation inside through private religions, which we think largely mitigate all of the harms that they provided to us today. But secondly, on religious entanglement with politics, I just want to weigh this point over the religious freedom argument. We think that the religious entanglement with politics is the most important issue in this debate. This is because firstly, religious entanglement with politics harms everyone. Just notice how in Louisiana, the state mandated everyone to teach creationism and to teach the 10 Commandments, regardless of what religion they were. So basically, these kinds of policies hurt every single person on the ground, regardless of whether you're religious or not. But secondly, we say that religious entanglement with politics is most important because it's the most certain impact in today's debate. When strict state secularism is implemented, it will substantially lower the ability of politicians to entangle with religion. Because we told you stuff like public funding, they can't get money from lobbyists anymore. Parents literally cannot go to school boards and request the curriculum to be changed. We think that this is the most certain impact in this debate. But lastly, we think that the right of religion is not absolute. We restrict the right to freedom of expression all of the time. We think that this looks like, just limiting vandalism, limiting hate speech, limiting all these forms of expression. Insofar as the right to freedom and the right to religion is not absolute, we have to put this, we have to weigh this below the state's responsibility to provide accessibility and accessible public spaces for everyone that is based on everyone's tax money. But lastly, on minorities, we think that we already provided to a host of reasons from our first speaker that the reason why minorities are being discriminated is because the majority of people feel threatened by the minorities when they see these burqas, when they see these hijabs. That people feel threatened because politicians fan the claims of anti-Islamic sentiment. We think that uniquely on our side this is not possible, which is why on our side everyone can sit together, everyone can coexist in a school, at their workplace, because they do not feel threatened by the other religion, and they will be willing to cooperate and to communicate with the other religion. So the conclusion of all of this is that the political entanglement of politics is the most important impact in this debate, and you should weigh it over any fluffy harms of religious freedom or any fluffy harms of minorities when they can't even protect minorities on their side through discrimination, anti-discrimination laws that do not even work. So for all of these reasons, we are so proud to propose today. Thank you.